Trauma at the U.S.-Mexico border. Donald Trump's zero-tolerance immigration policy means hundreds of children are still waiting to be reunited with their parents. I'm Adnan Nawaz, and today's newsmakers are Mexico's separated families. Cruel, immoral, and inhumane. Just some of the criticism directed at Donald Trump for his controversial approach to migrants who enter the United States without authorized documentation. The US president's decision to charge every undocumented new arrival with a criminal offense, that's meant more than 2,000 children being separated from their families. The condemnation forced Trump to sign an executive order to keep the families together, but hundreds of children are still without their parents. Many others have been separated from their mothers under different circumstances, but still as a result of Washington's immigration policy. One of the lesser-known consequences of Trump's hardline approach has been the deportation of migrants who are trying to become legal. Randolph Nogel went to the border to meet some of those affected.
Every weekend, a handful of families are granted permission to meet at the US-Mexico border in Tijuana. Many travel great distances for just a few moments. Relatives who come from the US side often have tenuous immigration status. This is the only way to see their loved ones, through a mesh of iron. Just enough space for the slightest touch. As the Trump administration promises more walls, barriers are something many Mexican families have come to know intimately. For mothers like Yvonne, life is dictated by the tides of separation and reunion. Yvonne's son lives in Chicago. She lived there for 12 years, through adolescence and into adulthood. The story of her separation started when she returned to Mexico City with her son to find a country she no longer knew.
It wasn't the same, of course. It's a different lifestyle. Finding a new job, new home, get to know people from here, get used to the violence in Mexico. I refuse to have my son see and experience the same issues that I was going through. Stability, emotional stability was hard to find. I didn't want my son to live that way. So I decided to send him back to where his dad is right now, Chicago.
She also wanted to return to the US, but couldn't.
I tried to fix my the papers to go back there, but it was impossible. So then my only option was to go back to Chicago, crossing the border. And I couldn't make it. Border Patrol catch me on the line. They deported me. I went back to Mexico City, but it felt just so far away from my son. I actually live in Tijuana because it makes me feel that I'm closer to my son, a little bit closer.
Yvonne isn't hopeful about her chances to get back into the US.
Since I get deported, I feel like almost impossible for me to go back there because the government is busy taking people out of the country, so why would they need more to go back? I see it kind of difficult, but there is always a hope. I don't want to miss his graduation from middle school, from high school. I don't want to miss those days. I want to be there.
Yvonne's case is one of the lesser-known consequences of long-standing U.S. immigration policy. The administration of former U.S. President Barack Obama deported more than 2.7 million people over the course of 8 years, almost 1,000 a day, earning him the nickname Deporter-in-Chief. But the Trump administration has come under even greater scrutiny for making unauthorized immigration a criminal offense, and in so doing, separating children from their parents.
I think a lot of the news are concentrating on these few, and I'm going to say few, even though there are hundreds of them that came on the caravan, but this has been happening since 2006, so the amount of people in the court process is overwhelming, just Mexican nationals.
The Trump administration's zero-tolerance policy has led to other kinds of child-family separations. Maria Gaeta heads a group called Deported Mothers and Families in Action. She says more children are being separated now than ever before.
Honestly, to me, it's getting worse. It's not getting any better. It's not better. Especially now, it's more separation of families. It's different. Yeah, deportations exist for many years, but we used to see a lot of men being deported and the kids stay in the United States with the mother. But now I've been seeing a lot of mothers being deported also. And they don't have no felonies, a lot of them.
The way these people have been sent back with no due process is what is really alarming.
The difference that I see is before I used to ask questions to people that I met here at the canal or on the streets, and they used to say that they have already a deportation order when that happened, when they deport them. But now, a lot of times people, they don't have any felonies or nothing. The only problem they have, they're leaving the United States illegally.
Every day, dozens of people are sent down this pathway, carrying nothing more than their deportation papers. For many, it's starting over with nothing. There are few resources to help them get back on their feet, and one day, they hope, back to their families. When Sylvia was deported, she arrived in Tijuana with nothing except the youngest of her 3 children. She's one of the mothers Maria has helped. For 25 years, Sylvia lived in San Diego, just across the border. Sylvia was undocumented, but checked in on a regular basis with immigration authorities regarding her status.
Iba a reportarme cada año, 6 meses, 3 meses, dependía, ¿verdad?, el papeleo que metiera el abogado. En el año pasado fui a la última cita, ¿verdad?, en octubre 11, fue cuando me detuvieron, me dijeron que mi caso estaba negado, cerrado y me tenía que salir.
And the sad thing is that her daughter needs help. She needs to go to a special therapist because she has problems speaking, and she needs a therapist, but she can go here in Mexico because she doesn't have the money.
Y ella empezó a hablar hasta los 4 años de edad, cada día más que ella fue un cambio muy difícil, porque ella no sabía escribir ni leer español y poco a poco hemos estado mucho practicando. Ahora, pues, por lo menos de que terminara el mayor el high school, pues el pequeño todavía no lo ha acabado, pero y Kayla creció un poquito, ¿verdad? Ya no era un baby como antes.
The only thing she did is living in the United States illegally, but she was working all her life, supporting her kids because her husband was deported to Mexico also. But he was deported a long time ago, like 8, 9 years ago, and she stayed there taking care of the kids and working to support her family.
Yo pensé que a ellos les importaban los niños, pero no, en ninguna parte les importan. Yo siempre cuando llegué a San Diego siempre trabajé de recamarera y estos últimos años en este hotel trabajé 14 años, casi 15. Y tenía que trabajar mis 5 días hasta 6. Llevaba a mis 3 hijos a la escuela por la mañana, los repartía de uno en uno. En la mañana, en la tarde recogía al más pequeño y a ella. Y ellos siempre han dependido de mí. Y yo digo, yo sé que ellos merecen una mejor vida que la que yo he tenido.
Sylvia doesn't know if she'll be able to find a way to get back into the U.S.
Pero ya estando afuera ya es más difícil. Ya, o sea, si estando allá es difícil, imagínense afuera. Acá yo no tengo dinero para pagar abogado.
Sylvia's children are U.S. citizens and come to see her on a regular basis. But Yvonne went 5 years without seeing her child. She could only call and hear his voice.
The only phone that I can call is his dad's phone, but if I call them 20 times in a month, only one they answer. So I get to speak with my son like 5 minutes or maybe 2 minutes because it's never gonna be the same talking face to face than talking by phone. So he's like, hey mom, I'm doing okay. But he might not know me. Last year when he came, he ran and hugged me. Hey mom, and we get to see each other after 5 years. But then he stopped hugging me and he's like, I don't even recognize you anymore. It breaks my heart. Imagine your son saying that to you. It's very sad. I didn't know what to say at that time. And so, don't worry, son, we're gonna get to know each other.
This is the second time Yvonne will see her son in 6 years.
You're almost here. Ay, mi vida.
Maria was also able to help Yvonne and facilitate the reunion.
But those kids, they need both parents. They don't need only one. But neither the government in Mexico or the government in the United States is doing anything for those kids.
He don't know me. He doesn't want to stay yet here because he doesn't know me. And so I have to build that relationship, that trust. I have to make him to trust me, to ask for more time spending with me.
Randolph Nogel reporting from Tijuana. Now, to discuss the policies behind these separations, let's go to Washington. Andrew Arthur is there for us. Andrew is a resident fellow in law and policy at the Center for Immigration Studies, also in the American capital. Wael Al-Zayat, he's a former senior advisor to the U.S. ambassador at the United Nations, Samantha Power. Gentlemen, welcome to the Newsmakers. Andrew, the question has been asked before, but it has to be asked. Is the President of the United States a racist?
No, I don't think that the President of the United States is a racist. Donald Trump has lived most of his life in the public sphere, and he's certainly never been an individual who has exhibited any signs of racism in the past. He's, been a businessman. He's dealt with all different kinds of people, and quite frankly, at the end of the day, I think that in his business policies, the only color that Donald Trump saw was green. And as president, he hasn't advanced any policies. All that he's attempted to do is to enforce the immigration laws of the United States and the other laws of the United States.
So it's fair enough to call Mexican immigrants rapists, murderers, drug dealers, which was right at the very start of the whole Donald Trump being in charge of the United States. Is the world happy about that? It's okay to call the very latest issue being his former aide, who he's fired, Omarosa, as she's referred to, as a dog. This is a black lady. Look, we know the president doesn't particularly respect women, but would he call a white woman a dog?
I don't know. I don't know enough about Donald Trump. I've never met him. All that I do is I look at the policies that the president has implemented. With respect to his statements at the beginning of his campaign, I believe that he was talking specifically about criminals. In fact, he indicated when he clarified his statements that, he had great respect for the Mexicans who came here and were hardworking, as well as other immigrants who came to the United States and were hardworking people. So I believe that he's clarified those statements since then, and I don't believe that they reflect the man himself. But as I said, I've never met him personally.
Wael?
I agree with the previous statement in terms of, at the end of the day, you never know what's in the heart of man, but all we can do is look at the actions and the statements. And the actions lead me to believe he's a racist. He did not call the fascists who marched in Washington, D.C. or Charlottesville as dogs. He did not call them as murderers. Even one of them did kill a young lady. He, in fact, equated between the protesters and the anti-protesters when there should be no comparison between them, because one was literally marching with Nazi flags. He has basically alluded that the best way to kill Muslims is to dip the bullets in pig's blood, which is a horrendous Islamophobic remark and sentiment. And the list goes on. He has simply not attacked non-immigrants, non-whites, non-Christians in the same manner, even when they have committed, let's say, similar or comparable atrocities or just criminal behavior. It's just his statements are not the same. And that leads me to believe that he has a racism problem.
Andrew, let's presume, shall we, because as you both say, none of us knows Donald Trump personally. We can't speak for him. We can't see into his heart, Wael, as you say. Let's presume that none of this is based on race. We're talking here specifically about Mexican families that have been separated at the border. There's still 559 children who are not reunited with their families. What do Trump supporters, Andrew, say about this policy, even if they agree with the president that illegal immigration, some people even say that the word illegal should never be applied to a human being, that migrants who come without proper documentation are being separated from their children? What do Trump supporters say about that?
Well, I would note that the vast majority of individuals who are apprehended at the border these days are not actually Mexican nationals, but rather nationals from what we call the Northern Triangle countries of Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador. With respect to the president's policies on prosecuting individuals who enter the United States illegally, that's a law that's been on the books for decades, and the president is enforcing it as a tool in order to discourage individuals from entering the United States illegally. And there are two good reasons to prevent individuals from entering the United States illegally. The first is we only have about 18,600 Border Patrol agents to patrol a border that's about 1,900 miles long. Given the fact that they work in shifts and they're government employees, they only work about 40 to 50 hours a week. At any given time, we only have so many Border Patrol agents along the border. Every time that they apprehend an unaccompanied alien child or a family, agents have to be pulled off the line in order to process those individuals. That gives an opportunity for other human smugglers, human traffickers, individuals who peddle in human despair, as well as drug traffickers to run their illicit goods across the border.
Andrew,
the
listen,
other reason to discourage
quite
individuals,
possibly, that's absolutely fair enough. Okay, if you want to support,
but there's one.
That particular
but there's
policy,
actually one. But there's one.
The issue is about children.
One more important
the issue
point
is
to
about
make,
children. We're talking about children, specifically about children being separated from their families.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, because of the way that the laws have been written, and the laws that have been written by both Republican and Democratic lawmakers, separation of individuals during prosecution is the law. The president has issued an executive order that said that those individuals should not be separated during the criminal prosecutions that take place. So the president has indicated that he has identified the problem and is attempting to take care of it. The reason that there is actually a separation is because the parents go into marshal's custody at the time that they're prosecuted, but we don't prosecute children for entering the United States illegally. But because of laws that were passed largely with Democratic votes, any child who is separated from his parent becomes an unaccompanied alien child, and that child goes into the custody not of DHS, not of DOJ, but of the Office of Refugee Resettlement.
Can I just give you one more chance to say it's wrong to separate children from their families? Do you want to say that?
No, nobody wants to see. Nobody wants to see parents separated from their children. I'm a father myself. The president is a father, and he's expressed his statements about it. Again, the president has taken steps in order to ensure that parents are not separated from their children, but there are laws in the United States that unfortunately have resulted in that. The president has taken steps to ameliorate the effects of those laws. The president doesn't want to see it happen, and I don't want to see it happen either. Okay. It doesn't sound like you do either.
Okay. While Andrew says that it's not just Republicans, it's not just this president, it's happened before. It's been going on for 10 years, he says.
That's not quite true. And in the law, it does not say that you actually have to separate children from their parents and cause long-lasting trauma, as we're seeing right now. What it does say is that if you are apprehended that you could either be detained or released on your own recognizance and come back for your trial, which is what many administrations have done in the past, which has enabled them to stay monitored in the United States with their children under Republicans and Democrats. It was only with this administration and with some of the advisors we all know, like Stephen Miller, who are using this strategy to deter not just illegal, but also legal immigration to the United States. And they're basically telling all the brown people of the world, if you dare to set foot on the United States, we're going to harass you, we're going to detain you, we may imprison you, and we may even take your children. And that's literally what is going on.
The administration, Wael, was told specifically how much distress and psychological damage these separations would do to minors, to children. They still went ahead with it. What does that say about the decisions that are being made inside the White House?
You know, let me just, let's get real, guys. I'm an immigrant. I'm a first-generation immigrant myself. From Syria. I was born and raised in Damascus, Syria, and immigrated to the United States legally. I grew up here to become a United States diplomat who served in Iraq in our embassy twice, where we're getting rocketed by militias. I've served in other dangerous areas on very difficult assignments. And I'm a proud immigrant of this country. And I believe that the United States is better, its people and its government, than how this government has been behaving. You know, I really have no idea what kind of people would actually stoop to the level that they have to separate little children from their mothers, right? To imprison people with their children as the alternative to separating them. This is insane. I'm embarrassed. I feel that the last 10 years are really what I have experienced. The best of our government and the great people who represent us abroad is being undone. In fact, the United States principles since the end of slavery and the civil rights movement and the post-World War II that we helped create is being undermined intentionally by people who are both ignorant and xenophobic. And it's very dangerous for American democracy and the world.
Okay, I want to come back to the overall feeling that some people say Trump is encouraging in the United States in just a moment. But Andrew, I just want to put to you the question of legality of some of these deportations. A lady called Carmen and her daughter were being deported from the United States. U.S. District Judge Emmett G. Sullivan said, turn the plane around, or at the very worst, don't let it take off. And this is his quote: this is pretty outrageous that someone seeking justice in a U.S. court is spirited away while her attorneys are arguing for justice for her. I'm not happy about this at all. This is not acceptable. The administration is breaking the law. That last phrase, the administration is breaking the law, is me, not the judge. What do you say?
Well, let me go back to the points that were made earlier, because I think that you're both missing a very important point. We want to discourage individuals from entering the United States illegally, in part to protect those individuals. The fact is, and this isn't just me, this is the Obama administration for whom my colleague worked. This is National Public Radio. This is National Geographic, have detailed the horrors that particularly women and children face as they make the perilous journey throughout Central America, through Mexico, to the United States. Mexico is a country that grants asylum. They're a signatory to the Asylum Convention. Individuals who have a fear can apply for asylum in Mexico. The fact that they make their way to the United States just exposes them to greater danger. Rapes, robberies, murders are common among smugglers. Smugglers are bad people. There's another effect that this has on Mexico, and that is the fact that the money that gets paid to smugglers, part of it goes into the pockets of the cartels. We don't need to discuss the horrors that the cartels have inflicted on Mexico. I believe that last year, Mexico recorded its highest murder rate ever.
Yes, you're completely correct, Andrew. And that's one of the reasons, that's exactly one of the reasons.
Discouraging people from entering the United States.
That's why people are trying to escape Mexico, exactly, as you say, the highest murder rate.
Discouraging people from entering the United States illegally is...
Okay, I tell you what, you didn't want to answer the question about the legality of some of these deportations. And then I said we would talk...
With respect to that specific deportation, I don't know the facts of it. But one thing I can tell you as a former official with the INS individuals are sometimes deported in error, and I believe that with respect to that case, those two individuals were deported in error. I believe that, I know the case that you're talking about, I don't believe that they left the plane, and I believe that they were flown back to the United States on the next flight.
Okay.
So again, accidents happen, but I don't have any reason to believe that those individuals were deported specifically against a judge's order. I'd be surprised if they would.
Okay, sure,
if I were the immigration official in charge of it, I wouldn't countenance.
Okay, I get it. Accidents can happen. Look, we've only got 2 minutes, so restrict yourself, if you don't mind, 45 seconds each. So to address this issue of the mood under which all of this is happening, the U.S. immigration policy under Donald Trump, you guys know this better than anybody. Laura Ingraham, on Ingraham, I think you probably say it, on Fox News, says, the America we know and love doesn't exist anymore. Massive demographic changes have been foisted on the American people, and they are changes that none of us ever voted for and most of us don't like. This is related to both illegal and legal immigration, demographic changes that none of us ever voted for and most of us don't like. Fox News is so hugely popular, and so many of the viewers will say, absolutely right, we don't like it when non-white people come to America. Is that what she's saying, Andrew?
Diversity is the strength of America, and quite frankly, the president wants to move to a merits-based system. One of the benefits of a merits-based system is it's largely race-blind, it's largely nationality-blind. It doesn't matter whether it's the doctor from Nigeria or the engineer from Pakistan. If they've got the skills and ability to succeed in the United States and add to our economy and add to our culture, we want them in our country.
Okay. Thank you very much.
The American people are pro-immigrant.
Okay, we have to keep it brief. Well, last word to you, briefly.
Yeah, no, the America that we know is a land of opportunity and immigration, not just merit-based. All of a sudden now we only want the doctors to come from Nigeria, but not the laborer or the asylum seeker. That's not what made us. That's not what brought my family here. I didn't come from a family of doctors, but I became a U.S. diplomat. So if that's not the American dream and what's making this country great, I don't know what is.
Andrew, Vael, we really appreciate you joining us on the program. Thank you. Still to come on the Newsmakers, conspiracy theorist Alex Jones is banned from major content platforms. Is this preventing hate speech or an attack on free speech? And a global heat wave has shattered records across the globe. Is climate change now irreversible? There was a time when being a conspiracy theorist would make you the butt of people's jokes. Area 51 in New Mexico is full of aliens. The moon landings, they were faked. But in the United States today, there is a man whose conspiracy theories are not being laughed at. They're being taken very seriously by many. Alex Jones is his name. He and his online show InfoWars get millions of views. But suddenly he's found it more difficult to get his message across because almost every major online platform, including Facebook and YouTube, have banned him. Some people say it's the right decision to counter his hate speech. Others say it's unwarranted censorship. Sandra Gatzman takes a look at the man behind the mic.
September 11th was only the latest in a long line of terror events orchestrated by the shadow government.
Sandy Hook, it's got inside job written all over it. There's giant weather modification systems, and there's weather wars between different governments.
He's America's most popular conspiracy theorist, who began on the fringe as a wacky radio host, but soon moved onto the web and into the mainstream. Alex Jones and his website InfoWars has attracted millions of followers, including President Donald Trump's support base and the U.S. President himself.
Your reputation's amazing. I will not let you down. You will be very, very impressed, I hope. And I think we'll be speaking a lot.
But his streamed content is steadily being stopped in an effort to contain the spread of fake news and hate speech. Facebook, Google, and YouTube, Apple, Vimeo, and Spotify have all blocked Alex Jones and InfoWars. YouTube spokesperson said, when users violate these policies repeatedly, like our policies against hate speech and harassment, we terminate their accounts. Facebook's explanation was, We have taken it down for glorifying violence and using dehumanizing language to describe people who are transgender, Muslims, and immigrants. This week, Twitter joined the crowd, freezing Alex Jones' account for 7 days. True to his style, Alex Jones says it's all part of a conspiracy against him.
This is 21st century warfare. It's happening right now that Communist China owns our debt, owns and controls Hollywood now, is involved in massive domestic propaganda operations, and is working with the Democratic Party and with the EU and others to try to block the Trump agenda.
While some have long dismissed Alex Jones as a harmless character, critics say his messages are dangerous. The parents of children killed in the Sandy Hook school shooting have sued Jones for suggesting they're actors who staged the attack. Brennan Gilmore has faced harassment after Jones said his video of a neo-Nazi plowing into pedestrians in Charlottesville was also fake.
Still videos out there being produced every few days, it seems like, about why everything I said was a lie and why I'm a deep state actor. I received a death threat 2 weeks ago, I think. Somebody posted on my Facebook page, my body's going to be found at the bottom of a river which runs near my house.
Shutting down InfoWars is part of an expanding battle by media organizations to stop the spread of fake news. But skeptics are asking why private companies and tech giants should become the arbiters of truth, and whether online restrictions obstruct the right to free speech. Will blocking certain views from the mainstream only drive them underground? Alex Jones, at least, already has ideas.
Give us your email, and we will send you exclusive videos, articles, videos, big deals, specials, you name it. Do they think I need the internet to communicate with the president or anybody else?
Sandra Gottman, The Newsmakers.
Well, joining me now from Washington is William Binney. He spent more than 30 years with the National Security Agency, the NSA, where he served as technical director. He's also been a guest on InfoWars. In New York is Jamila Brown. She is a digital strategist and the communications director at Some of Us. It's an organization that holds corporations accountable for unethical behavior. Thanks to both of you for joining us on The Newsmakers. William, how much of a blow to freedom of speech is this ban by these tech companies on Alex Jones and InfoWars?
I think basically what that's saying is that the companies are now going to set the standard of what is acceptable in the media and what isn't, and what is hate speech and what isn't. I mean, that's not something that's in their in their domain to really do. I mean, that like opens it up to anybody shutting off anybody.
It's a good point, Jamila. It's a good point, isn't it, Jamila, that why should a tech company have the moral authority to say what's right and what's wrong?
I think that we have to realize that these tech companies have really a lot of say-so in terms of the consequences of the content that they put out. And with journalists, we hold them to a journalistic standard and ethics, and the same should actually extend to these tech companies that are big sources of information.
William, you're nodding there.
Yes, I agree. I mean, there should be some standard, but I don't think the companies individually should be the ones to set it, simply because they're led by people who have prejudices in one way or another politically, in this country anyway. And that's certainly what they're doing, is like shadow banning people who are not politically saying the things they once said. Now, this is a bad thing to do. This is how you filter the media and how you filter any of the information that people are trying to find on the web, for example, or anywhere, and news everywhere. The same is true with the mainstream media. They're doing the same thing over here in the U.S. So.
Yeah, Jamila, whether you're left or right, your opinions can be censored, it seems now. There was an ad for an organization that wanted to hold an anti-fascist, anti-racism rally in Washington that was removed because it was believed that possibly Russia may have interfered with that organization. The organization said, we're nothing to do with Russia. We're just normal citizens that don't want racism in the United States. Why have you banned our ad? So left and right are both suffering from this kind of censorship.
I do think that's something that is really important to note. So on Facebook in particular, we saw the censorship of Corrine Gaines, who was a mother from Baltimore, who was killed by the police in an interaction. So we do see these things. I think that we do need some more oversight. The FCC is one entity that we can use to implement those standards. The key, though, is we need to make sure that we're looking at hate supremacist, like white supremacist hate speech in the United States and all over the world, and really understanding the implications of that. And that is something that these tech companies for the past 2 years have been promising to crack down upon. This is a step in the right direction, but yes, it has definitely become a slippery slope. And really what we're seeing on our side of the fence is that there's a racial component to this, if we're being quite honest. A lot of activists who are people of color, who are immigrants, who are LGBTQ, are the ones who are facing the brunt of this censorship. And we have to start really taking deeper questions into why these activists are being censored and what responsibility the tech world plays in it.
Yeah, it's interesting. You're both against censorship, it seems, but this issue of hate speech, William, that's extremely important. Is Alex Jones guilty of hate speech, as Facebook says, because it says that some of his material violates his policies on hate speech and graphic violence? It refers specifically, Facebook says, to his language to describe people who are transgender, Muslims and immigrants, as has been pointed out in the report that preceded this discussion.
Well, you know, over here, of course, we have the First Amendment, and that guarantees the right to free speech, and it says that anybody, it actually protects any kind of speech, even if you don't like it. You know, and we should be able to say certain things are not acceptable. Those things that advocate violence, for example, or any kind of civil disturbance that is disruptive and damaging to the society in any way. So, but I just don't know that the companies, in my view, don't have the real understanding of this situation to be able to set the standards for that. And I just think we need some common standards set by, and I think the FCC is a good one to start. They certainly could set those standards and enforce them.
So these tech companies have made this decision about Alex Jones and InfoWars, but his website, of course, still exists. And some people believe the internet is a bit of a wild west. Earlier this week, Alex Jones put a clip on Periscope, which is owned by Twitter. So he's still able to get out there. Let's play the clip and then come back to you.
We're under attack, and you know that. You've pointed out mainstream media is the enemy. But now it's time to act on the enemy. But there's groups, there's grand juries, you call for it. It's time politically and economically and judiciously and legally and criminally to move against these people. It's got to be done now. So people need to have their battle rifles and everything ready at their bedsides, and you got to be ready.
Okay, it was about 2 minutes 24. We condensed it into 3 separate small clips. William, you said incitement to violence is a good reason to censor someone. That seemed to be an incitement to violence. Get your baton rifles out. And then there's the issue where he says he can still address President Trump, who was a guest of his before he became president, on InfoWars. And Trump has said, he has told Alex Jones, yeah, I watch your program. There's also the issue of the discord that is being sowed by people like Alex Jones, and whether President Trump might even actively encourage that because he may feel he's able to take advantage of the discord that is sown in American society by people like Alex Jones.
Well, I don't, you know, I think the American public's really sophisticated enough to be able to handle just about anything that anybody says. I mean, down through history, I think we've done that. But, you know, Alex, for example, I can cite another case in Alex's court, a positive one, where I was showing slides of the Fairview program, the tapping points inside the United States. And he was the only one that would show that on TV. The rest of the mainstream media would not. And that's informing the public of what's really happening to you and spying. So you can look at it in different ways. I think in the way he was talking about the guns there, he was basically you know, affirming the Second Amendment. And the reason we have that Second Amendment is not because of foreign governments, but because of our own. That's our founders really feared central government. So I know that's why they have that Second Amendment. And so I don't think Alex Jones was advocating going out shooting people. He's just saying, you need to use the Second Amendment and be prepared. If anybody comes at you, you have it. So not go out and actively do anything. I didn't read that way.
Okay, Jamila?
I I honestly have to disagree. I think that there's a difference between free speech and free speech in the service of power. And this is specifically speaking to a demographic of white people who feel disenfranchised and disaffected at this moment to go and take arms against those who would strip power, or they feel, away from them. This is actually the type of thing that we've seen that has resulted in an uptick of violence and white supremacist violence across the United States. Most notably, recently, Mia Wilson, a young Muslim Black woman, was killed at the BART station. Her sister was also stabbed in the attack. We've seen this all over the country. And these are the kinds of dog whistles and race baiting that is particularly the kinds of things that these tech platforms and we as a society need to be standing up against.
Okay, let's just end with the responsibility that these tech companies have, which you touched upon just slightly earlier. It was at the end of 2016, Mark Zuckerberg said, editing, that's not for us. Now, it seems with these decisions and this particular one about Alex Jones, that the companies understand that they're very much media companies, that they are also responsible for the content that is published on their platforms. Facebook is working with Congress and a think tank called the Atlantic Council about how to make sure that its platform is not abused. The Atlantic Council is funded by 25 different foreign countries, some of whom can certainly not be said to be defenders of democracy. It's also funded by companies such as Raytheon, the weapons manufacturer. Are you happy with that, William?
No, I'd rather see some public forum set up to be able to adjudicate and set up these standards, and then have those adopted by Congress or whoever would need to ensure that they were enforced by the FCC or other organizations inside this country and maybe other organizations around the world.
Jamila, is it time now to start treating these tech companies like utilities and they should be regulated? Because while they may be private companies, they're not government-owned. Yep. They're private companies, but they represent such a massive part of the public sphere. They are really the main way that we discuss world issues nowadays.
It's true, and I completely agree with that. I also agree with William's statement of having a public forum and then having Congress to step in and ratify or adjudicate. That would also be the right step in the right direction. The other thing I will say is that in a time of corporate media where we're seeing human rights abuses, a lot of the way activists are getting information out is through social media. So we do have to make sure to protect the platforms and make sure that this kind of information, stories that are often not told on your average TV program, are getting out there. We've seen it from the Egyptian revolution has really just changed the way in which activists are getting information out there. And we have to protect that while also guarding against this uptick of violence and dog whistles and white supremacy that we're seeing just sweep across not only the United States, but also the Western world.
William and Jamila, thank you for joining us on the Newsmakers.
I feel very warm. It's incredible these days. Yesterday was unbelievable. So we were looking for some fresh, cool area here, but on the lake it was hotter than here under the tree. So I hope next days the heat will go down, because otherwise it is very difficult to survive.
Things certainly seem to be heating up on planet Earth. Temperatures have reached record highs in many parts of the world. And after the warnings that climate change threatens our very existence, is the current wave of wild weather clear evidence of global warming? It's been so hot in the past few weeks, parts of the globe are literally burning. Forest fires, searing heat in Europe and Japan, also flooding across Asia. They've all killed hundreds of people. So is there time to reverse the damaging effects of global warming, or is it just too late? Robert Watson is a former senior scientist at the World Bank. He's the director of the science division for the Planet Earth mission at NASA. He's also the chair of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on the Newsmakers. Are we past the point of no return, in your opinion?
It's quite clear that we humans are affecting the Earth's climate. We cannot stop global warming, but we can clearly limit it. We have already increased the temperature of the Earth by about 1 degree Celsius since 1900, and it's almost inevitable that it will increase another 1 to 3 degrees Celsius unless we start to do something to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions.
When you say we can affect the rate of climate change, but that is an issue of lifestyle, is it not? It's a question of consumerism. It's about everybody wanting more of everything. And if it is that that's going to make a difference to climate change, how likely really is it, given that industrialization and everything that comes with our lifestyles is now so much part of our human way of living?
It's going to be a major challenge to limit the amount of climate change. It will take government action, governments putting the right policies in place to stimulate clean energy. It will take industry to be willing to provide clean energy. And it will take us as individuals care in the way we use our energy. So it's basically a question of how do we produce energy more cleanly, more renewable energy, wind, solar power, rather than relying on dirty fossil fuels, coal, oil and gas. It will mean that we have to use our energy more efficiently in our buildings, in our cars and by industry. So it is possible to try and limit human-induced climate change. The question is there the political will at the government level, at the industry level, and we as individuals?
At what point can we say that we don't have to wait any longer for the trends that climate change deniers say need to happen? In other words, decades of a difference in temperature and in weather patterns. At what point do we say that no, it's here? Those trends are currently here. It's an undeniable, immutable fact that the climate is changing.
There is absolutely no question at all. We are already changing the Earth's climate. There is absolutely no question. We have been the major cause of the world warming up, especially in the last 50 years. It's causing heat waves around the world. It's causing floods around the world. It's causing droughts in many parts of the world, and it's increasing sea level. All of these things are having adverse effects on agriculture, on water supply, on human settlements and on human health. There is no question that climate change is already occurring and most of the effects are negative.
If the world does succeed in hitting the targets set by the IPCC, what are the worst effects of climate change going to be despite reaching those targets? What are the worst effects going to be in 50 years' time of climate change?
But what the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change says is even at a 2 degrees Celsius change, we will see decreased agricultural productivity in many parts of the world, especially in developing countries. We could see anywhere from 0.5 to 1 metre sea level rise over the next 50 to 100 years, displacing potentially millions of people in coastal areas and on low-lying deltaic areas and small islands. We could see water resource scarcity in many parts of the world, and indeed we are already seeing challenges to agricultural productivity in countries within Africa. We're already seeing water shortages in many parts of the world. We're already seeing destruction of coastal settlements due to increased cyclonic and hurricane activity.
You know about the contentious issue of migration. In Europe, in other parts of the world, we're doing a special on migration from Mexico to the United States here on the Newsmakers this week. Is climate change going to make parts of the world, and how much of the world, uninhabitable?
Whether the world becomes truly uninhabitable, it will certainly be less habitable. And indeed, most of the negative effects of climate change are on poor people in developing countries. While all of us will suffer from climate change, it is the poor, and it is poor in developing countries. This is most likely going to lead to some level of migration. People will either move within their own country, they'll move to neighbouring countries, or conceivable, it will actually push migration across transatlantic boundaries or from Africa into Europe. So there is no question climate change can only exacerbate the problem of migration that we have today.
Some people believe that scientific advances will solve the problem and that the planet will be saved through science. On Wednesday, there was news that scientists have found a way to produce a mineral called magnesite. And you'll know this, of course, and magnesite can absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. What hope do you place in science as a solution?
Well, unfortunately, I can't place too much hope that we'll solve the problem today. What we need to do are advances in science, just as you've mentioned, but we need today to start to produce our energy in a cleaner manner. We need today to start to use our energy in a more efficient manner. So yes, I welcome advances such as the one you've just mentioned, but there are cost-effective ways today in all countries of the world, developed and developing, to try and reduce our emissions of greenhouse gases. So we need effectively a two-pronged attack. Reduce emissions today with the technology we've already got and continue to find advances in science that can complement what we can already do today. And unfortunately, it isn't climate change just affecting food, agriculture, water resource. It also affects our biodiversity, our nature, the forests of the world, the coral reefs of the world, the mangrove systems of the world. And poor people throughout the world also rely on nature to provide livelihoods, to provide food, to provide medicines. So the issues of climate change and the so-called loss of biodiversity, the destruction of nature, are strongly coupled.
So, Robert, thank you very much indeed for joining us on The Newsmakers. That's all for this edition of The Newsmakers with me, Adnan Nawaz. Check out more of our stories on YouTube, Facebook and Twitter. Remember to like, follow and subscribe. Until next time, thanks for watching. Goodbye.